At a noisy Houston construction site, Millionaire CEO Mason Reed, known for steel and stone, not softness, was reviewing plans when a boy's voice cut through the clatter. "Dad, look!" Mason turned, startled. There, in a dusty lot next door, an 11-year-old boy was building a model bridge out of scrap wood and nails. His name was Finn, and something about him, his stubborn chin, the fire in his eyes, stopped Mason cold. Mason wasn't a man easily shaken, but this boy's design, it mirrored a sketch he once shared with Kate, the woman he'd walked away from years ago, a woman he never stopped missing. As Mason stared at the bridge, something inside him cracked. Who was this boy, and why did he call him Dad? What Mason didn't know was that Kate had kept a devastating secret, one fueled by a lie from Mason's own father. Now, standing in the Texas sun with sawdust in the air and truth in the wind, Mason faces a bridge built not just from wood, but from questions he's too afraid to answer. Is this boy really his son? And if so, can Mason cross the span of regret before it's too late? Subscribe to see this heartfelt story unfold. The sun baked the steel skeletons of half-finished buildings on Houston's west side, heat rippling off metal girders like mirages. Mason Reed stood beneath the scaffolding of Tower 5, sleeves rolled, eyes narrowed. He wasn't the kind of CEO who hid in corner offices. He built empires with his hands once, and now, at 40, with every deal signed and every bridge built, something inside still felt unfinished. "Boss, the city planner's waiting at the trailer," his foreman called over the hum of machinery. Mason gave a tight nod, turning toward the dirt path cutting through the construction zone. That's when he heard it. "Dad, look!" The words hit him like a brick to the chest. He stopped mid-stride, heart lurching. Slowly, he turned. Across the fence in the lot next to the site stood a boy, maybe 11, dark hair matted with sweat, arms dusted with sawdust. He held up a wooden bridge, handmade, pieced together from scraps. His brown eyes sparkled with pride. "Did you see it?" the boy shouted again. "I made it for the contest." Mason stared, frozen. He didn't know this kid. Yet, something about the boy, his stance, the shape of his jaw, the familiar defiance in his expression, struck a chord deep in his bones. The foreman blinked. "You know that kid?" "No," Mason said too quickly. "No, I've never seen him." But his voice trembled, and when the boy turned back to his work, hammering nails into balsa wood like a pro, Mason couldn't stop watching. Later, in the cool of the site trailer, Mason sipped lukewarm coffee, barely listening to the city planner's report. His mind replayed the moment, the voice, that face, the bridge. That bridge. He'd built one just like it, decades ago, for a high school engineering fair. Kate had helped him paint it. Kate. He hadn't thought of her in years, not really. Not since the day she walked away, her eyes hard, lips trembling, a letter crumpled in her fist. "You chose your father's company over me," she had said, "over us." Back then, Mason believed Bruce, believed his father when he said Kate had left, said she was never ready for family, said she moved on. But now, a boy who could pass for Mason's younger self was calling him Dad from across a chain-link fence. He rose abruptly. "Cancel the meeting. I'll reschedule." Outside, the boy was still there, adjusting tiny beams beneath his model. Mason approached slowly, heart pounding. "Hey, that's a solid design." The boy glanced up, cautious. "Thanks. I used a triangle base to keep it stable, like the old Parker Truss design." Mason blinked. "You know Parker Truss?" "Yeah," the boy shrugged. "My mom showed me." "And your mom?" "She's around." "She's at work." The boy didn't elaborate. "She says I got a knack for this stuff, like someone I don't know." There was a long pause. Mason crouched beside him, noting the initials carved into the base, FR. The boy noticed. "I'm Finn. Finn Rivers." Mason stared at the letters, FR. His last name wasn't Reed. Still, his gut twisted. "That bridge," Mason said slowly. "It's really good." Finn grinned, the kind of grin that made Mason's breath catch. "You should see the one I'm building for the contest. I'm going to win. Then I'll get a full scholarship to the engineering camp." Mason swallowed hard. "Mind if I watch?" Finn nodded once, proud. "Sure, but I'm not slowing down." As the boy returned to his work, Mason sat on a nearby crate, eyes drawn again to that wooden bridge. Sturdy, hopeful, just like the one he once built, back when he believed love and blueprints could hold the same weight. The wind shifted. Sawdust swirled. Mason didn't move. He had no idea who Finn Rivers really was. But deep down, some part of him already knew. The next morning, Mason returned to the lot before sunrise, coffee in hand, boots crunching over gravel. The construction site was still asleep, but across the fence the boy was already there, working, measuring, balancing thin strips of wood like a surgeon. Mason watched from a distance at first. Finn's fingers moved with confidence beyond his years. The structure was bigger now, more refined. And the design? It wasn't just clever. It was something Mason had drawn himself once for a pitch that never saw daylight. "You're up early," Mason called out. Finn glanced over his shoulder, not surprised. "So are you." Mason stepped closer, resting an arm on the chain-link fence. "You build this from scratch?" "Yeah," Finn said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Scrap wood, nails, and a lot of guessing." Mason smiled faintly. "Looks like more than guessing." Finn shrugged. "My mom says I get that from someone." A beat passed. Then Mason asked carefully, "Your mom? What's she like?" "Smart, tough, always tired." Finn paused, eyes narrowing slightly. "She doesn't talk about my dad. Ever." Mason swallowed. "You ever ask?" "I used to," Finn said softly. She'd say, "Some bridges take longer to build." Then she'd go quiet. Mason's jaw clenched. That sounded like Kate. He cleared his throat. "Your last name's Rivers?" "Yeah, Finn Rivers." He looked back at his model. "Why?" "No reason," Mason lied, but it twisted in his gut. Kate Rivers, of course. He stayed longer than he meant to, watching Finn work. At one point, the boy held up a piece of the bridge, 2 beams tied with red thread. "This part," Finn said, "holds the weight. Like, no matter how much you pile on, it keeps standing. Pretty cool, right?" Mason nodded, his voice low. "Yeah, that's the heart of it." Red thread. Mason remembered Kate once wrapping a ribbon around his wrist during finals week. "To remind you, not everything worth holding has to be visible," she'd said. Back at his office, Mason sat at his desk but didn't open a single email. He typed Kate Rivers into a private database. Dozens of listings came up. None matched the face in his memory. He picked up his phone and dialed his assistant. "Melissa, get me everything you can find on a woman named Kate Rivers, age 38. Used to live in Spring, Texas. See if she has a son named Finn." Melissa hesitated. "Is this personal, sir?" Mason's voice cracked. "Yeah, it is." He hung up and turned back to the model Finn had sketched in his notebook and let Mason borrow. The design was meticulous. It wasn't a kid's doodle. It was architectural planning, purposeful and clean. At the corner of the page, Finn had written, "One day, I'll build a bridge big enough to find him." Mason stared at that sentence. His throat tightened. Across town, in a small second-floor apartment, Kate Rivers stirred her coffee in silence. She hadn't slept. Finn had come home yesterday and mentioned a man in a button-up who talked like he knew bridges. Kate's hands trembled. Not him. It couldn't be. She opened the bottom drawer of her dresser and pulled out a photo, faded and bent. Mason, 22, arms around her, smiling with that same spark Finn wore. She flipped it over. On the back, a note in Mason's handwriting. Forever isn't a place. It's you. But that forever had ended in silence. No explanations. Just a letter. Cold, cruel, left at her door. Kate had never shown Finn that part. She placed the photo face down. Outside, the sound of sirens faded. Inside, she whispered, "You don't get to come back now." Back at the site, Mason stood with Finn once more. The boy handed him a sketch. "You said you build real stuff, right? Think this could work?" Mason studied the drawing. Simple, elegant, with a red thread bridge in the center. "It already does," he said quietly. Finn smiled. "Maybe one day, I'll build one big enough to reach someone who left." Mason's voice was barely a breath. "Maybe you already have." Late afternoon heat shimmered off the pavement as Mason parked his truck a block from the lot. He hadn't meant to come back today, but something kept pulling him. Finn's bridge sketch sat on the passenger seat, edges worn from where Mason had traced the red thread over and over again. He stepped out, straightening his shirt. The lot buzzed with energy now. Other kids had joined the contest. Folding tables, glue guns, extension cords snaking through the dirt. A banner fluttered at the entrance. Future Builders Youth Challenge. Mason passed the gate, nodding at a volunteer. His eyes found Finn instantly. The boy was crouched over his project, sleeves rolled, focus intense. Tiny wooden trusses balanced across paper blueprints. A girl beside him sneezed, and he handed her a tissue without looking up. Mason smiled. There was kindness in him, and talent. "You're back," Finn said without looking up. "I said I would be." Finn glanced up. "You didn't have to. Most adults don't." "I'm not most," Mason replied quietly. Finn nodded once, then held up a new beam. "I reinforced the bottom. If I mess this up, it collapses." Mason crouched beside him. "That's the truth about bridges." Finn squinted. "You mean in life?" "In everything," Mason said. "If the foundation's cracked, it all falls." Behind them, a commotion stirred. Kate. She stepped through the crowd, arms crossed, eyes locked on Mason. Her auburn hair was pulled into a messy bun, sweat dotting her brow. But her gaze? Steel. "What are you doing here?" she asked, voice low. Finn froze, confused. "You two know each other?" Mason stood. "Hi, Kate." She ignored the greeting. "I don't remember inviting you to this part of our lives." "I didn't come to cause trouble," Mason said. "I saw him building. I couldn't walk away." Kate's jaw tightened. "You've had 11 years to walk toward something, Mason. Why now?" "Because he looked up and called me Dad." Kate's breath hitched. "He didn't know. He saw you and—" She looked at Finn, her voice breaking. "He doesn't know who you are." Mason stepped back, his voice quiet. "Then tell me." Kate shook her head. "This isn't a moment you get to own. He's not some project you can fix with money and a permit." Finn looked between them. "Wait, what's going on?" Mason knelt again, eye level with him. "I don't know everything yet, but I want to." Finn glanced at his mother. "Mom?" Kate closed her eyes, then sighed. "Go get some water, sweetheart, from the cooler." Reluctantly, Finn walked off. Kate turned back to Mason. "You weren't supposed to be here." "I didn't know," Mason said, "until yesterday." "And you believe it? Just like that?" "I believe what I see in him, and in you." She scoffed. "Please. You chose your father's company over everything we had." "I thought you left me," Mason said. "You sent a letter." Kate stiffened. "I never sent a letter." The ground seemed to shift under Mason's boots. "It was signed with your name. You said you were done, that I was too focused on legacy." Kate's eyes filled with fury. "I never wrote that. Your father, he came by the apartment, said you wanted to cut ties, said I was a distraction." Mason went pale. "He what?" Kate crossed her arms. "I begged him to let me talk to you. He said if I cared, I'd walk away quietly." Mason stared at the dusty ground, rage building. "That was the week the city granted us the East Point deal. My father said everything was fragile, that any scandal could ruin our expansion." Kate's voice dropped. "He made me believe you wanted nothing to do with family." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Mason said, "I'll get the truth, all of it." He turned, eyes catching Finn in the distance, laughing now, a cup of water in hand, holding a wooden beam high like a trophy. Kate watched him too, softer now. "He's got your hands," she said, "but thank God, not your walls." Mason exhaled. "Maybe. It's time I tore some down." Mason sat alone in his truck as the Houston sky burned orange with late evening sun. His hand clenched the steering wheel, but his thoughts were miles away, back in that lot, in Kate's eyes, in Finn's grin as he held that wooden beam. He couldn't shake it. She never wrote the letter. His father had lied, manipulated them both. He reached for his phone, thumb hovering. Then he dialed. "Dad?" Mason said, voice even. Bruce Reed answered, clipped and composed. "Mason, late call. Everything all right with the East Point contract?" Mason exhaled slowly. "We need to talk, face to face." Bruce paused. "About what?" "You know." There was silence. Then Bruce replied, "Come by the house, now." 20 minutes later, Mason stepped into the mansion that once raised him but never quite held him. Marble floors, cold walls. Bruce sat in the den, drink in hand, golf on mute. "Well?" Bruce asked without looking up. "You told Kate I didn't want her, that I didn't want a child." Bruce finally met his son's eyes. "That chapter was a threat to everything we'd built. You were young, reckless. You forged a breakup letter," Mason said, his voice sharp. "Made me believe she walked away." Bruce stood. "And look where you are now. CEO, owner of half of Houston's skyline." Mason's fists clenched. "And father to a boy I never got to meet. A boy who thought I was a stranger." Bruce stepped closer, cold confidence in his tone. "I protected the legacy." "You destroyed something better than legacy," Mason snapped. "You stole a family." The words echoed. Bruce looked unmoved. "If you'd known, you would have given it all up." "I still might," Mason said. "But this time, I'll do it my way." He turned and walked out without waiting for a reply. The next morning, Mason showed up early at the lot just as the kids were arriving. Finn spotted him first. "You came back," Finn said. "I'm not going anywhere," Mason replied. Finn grinned. "Good. I need help. The side trusses keep wobbling." Mason knelt, inspecting the beams. "Let's fix it together." As they worked, Finn talked non-stop about school, designs, a future in engineering. Mason listened like every word mattered, because now they did. Kate arrived later, arms crossed, guarded. "I thought I said, 'I know,'" Mason interrupted gently. "But I'm not here to push." She eyed him warily. He reached into his pocket and handed her something. An old photo, edges faded, the two of them, smiling under a steel frame. On the back, "Forever isn't a place. It's you." "I found it," Mason said. "You kept your side. I want to keep mine now." Kate didn't speak, but her eyes glistened. Mason continued. "He's incredible. Smart, brave, kind. That's you. And you," she whispered. "I missed 11 years. I can't change that," he said. "But I want to build something now. Something real." Finn called from across the lot, holding up a new beam. "Hey, look what I made, Dad!" The word hit like lightning, but this time it didn't hurt. It healed. Kate froze. Mason didn't flinch. He smiled. "Looks solid, kiddo." "You think it'll hold?" Finn asked. "With the right support," Mason said, walking toward him, "it'll last forever." He helped Finn slot the final piece in place. Kate watched from a distance, tears silently falling. The wooden bridge stood tall. Red thread bound its center. Not just a model anymore. It was a promise. Mason hadn't meant to stay all afternoon, but time melted away beside Finn's work table. The boy had a rhythm: measure, cut, align, smile. It reminded Mason of his early days on site, before boardrooms and contracts blurred his passion. Finn was quiet now, brow furrowed as he adjusted a tiny wooden beam. "That one looks a bit tight," Mason said gently. Finn didn't glance up. "I know. It warped overnight. The humidity messes with the glue." Mason nodded, impressed. "You figured that out on your own?" Finn shrugged. "Trial and error. It's how Mom taught me everything." Mason hesitated. "She taught you a lot." Finn set the piece down and finally looked at him. "She didn't have help." The words hung in the air. Finn wasn't accusing, just stating fact. But they struck Mason hard. "I want to help now," Mason said. "If you'll let me." Finn fiddled with a pencil. "People say stuff like that, then they disappear." Mason sat beside him. "I did disappear, not because I wanted to, but I'm here now." Finn studied him, silent, then pointed to the bridge. "That beam, right in the middle. It holds everything up. If it snaps, the rest falls." Mason met his eyes. "Then we'll make it stronger." Kate approached, wiping her hands with a rag. "Hey, Finn, time to pack up." Finn sighed. "Already? We've got to eat, and I've got work tonight." Mason stood. "Let me take you both to dinner." Kate tensed. "I don't think that's a good idea." "It's just a meal," Mason said. "Finn deserves something more than frozen lasagna, and I want to know who he is." Kate hesitated. "Fine. 1 hour, somewhere public." Later, at a quiet diner tucked beneath an overpass, they sat in a booth by the window. Finn devoured pancakes while Mason and Kate picked at their meals, eyes darting, conversation awkward. "He loves bridges," Mason said softly. "That's not coincidence." Kate took a breath. "No, it's not. Why didn't you tell him about me?" Kate looked away. "Because I didn't know what to tell him. You never came back. I thought you knew." Mason rubbed his jaw. "I didn't. Not until he called me Dad." Finn looked up. "Wait, you really didn't know about me?" Mason turned to him. "No, kiddo, I didn't. But if I had, I would have fought to be in your life." Finn stared for a moment, then pulled something from his backpack. A drawing. A crude bridge spanning 2 cliffs, one side marked me, the other someone I don't know. He handed it to Mason. "I made this last year." Mason's throat tightened. The lines were shaky, the pencil faint, but at the center, a beam marked with a red slash held it all together. "This is your middle beam," Mason whispered. Finn nodded. "It's the strongest part." Kate's eyes shimmered. "He's always been waiting, even when he didn't say it." Mason folded the drawing carefully. "Then I'll wait too, for as long as it takes." As they walked out, night falling across Houston's skyline, Mason paused beside his truck. "Kate," he said, "what if we don't just rebuild the past? What if we build something new?" She looked at him, wary. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you show up again tomorrow, and the day after that." He didn't hesitate. "I will." Finn climbed into the back seat, still holding his pancakes in a box. Kate lingered a moment longer. "Don't make promises you can't keep." Mason looked her in the eye. "This time, I won't break." They drove off under the overpass lights. Behind them, the sketch sat on the dashboard. 2 cliffs, 1 bridge. Still standing, the next morning, Mason stood outside a modest 2-story apartment on the east side of town. The paint on the shutters was peeling, but the porch was swept, and the flower pot on the step held fresh marigolds. He hesitated before knocking. Then, deep breath, fist raised, he rapped twice. Kate opened the door, hair pulled back, apron dusted with flour. She looked surprised, but not angry. "You're early," she said. "I couldn't sleep," Mason admitted. She stepped aside. "Coffee's on." Inside, the place was small but warm. A bridge made of popsicle sticks stretched across the dining table. Finn's work, clearly. "He's at school," Kate said, pouring 2 mugs. "Science fair prep." Mason took the coffee, but his eyes lingered on the bridge. Each beam was taped, labeled, supported by red thread woven through like veins. "I came to ask something," he said. Kate looked up. "Why didn't you tell me anyway? Even after my father said those things?" Kate sighed. "Because I believed him. I thought you wanted out, and by the time I realized I was pregnant, I couldn't risk him manipulating you further. Or Finn." Mason clenched his jaw. "You carried that alone for 11 years. I didn't have a choice." "You did," he said softly. "And I understand why you made it." She nodded, her voice quieter. "I didn't want my son growing up with lies, but I was afraid of what the truth would cost." Mason set the coffee down. "It cost more than either of us thought." Kate looked at him, searching. "So what now?" "I want to make space for him, for both of you, not just weekend visits or holiday cards. Real time, real connection." Kate crossed her arms. "You're saying all the right things, Mason. But can you back it up when your world starts pulling at you again?" "I already canceled a board meeting this morning," he said, "to be here." She blinked. "You don't cancel meetings." "I do now." She smiled, faint but real. That evening, Mason waited outside Finn's school. When the bell rang, kids poured out, but Finn stopped short when he saw Mason standing beside his truck, holding a familiar object. "You brought it?" Finn asked, running over. Mason held up the old blueprint. Creased, smudged. The same design from high school, the one he and Kate once built together. "I figured maybe we could upgrade it." Finn grinned. "Seriously? We'll need tools, some better wood, and a lot of snacks." Finn laughed. "Mom's gonna love this." As they drove, Mason glanced in the mirror at the boy staring at the blueprint in his lap. "You know," Finn said, "I used to imagine you were like a firefighter or a soldier, or maybe in space." Mason chuckled. "I'm just a guy who builds parking decks and condos." "Yeah," Finn smirked, "but your bridges are kinda awesome." Mason paused. "So are yours." That night, back at Kate's apartment, the 3 of them sat on the living room floor, plans spread across the rug, pencils, rulers, glue sticks scattered like treasure. Finn pointed to the model. "This part here, if we make it out of basswood instead of balsa, it won't flex as much." Kate raised an eyebrow. "Did you just say basswood?" Finn grinned. "I read the whole supply catalog last week." Mason nodded proudly. Engineer in the making. Kate looked at the 2 of them, shoulders touching, voices merging, hands moving in sync, and something in her softened again. Later, after Finn had gone to bed, Mason picked up the red thread Finn had used to bind the bridge. "You know," he said, holding it between his fingers, "this stuff, it's not strong on its own. But when you wrap it just right," Kate said, sitting beside him, "it holds more than you expect." Mason looked at her. "Like trust." Kate met his gaze. "Like family." By Saturday morning, the dusty lot buzzed with more kids than ever. Folding tables were covered in popsicle sticks, glue bottles, and sketch pads. Finn stood in the middle, organizing supplies like a foreman on a job site. His voice carried with confidence. "Stagger your supports, or the whole span leans left," he told a younger boy. "Watch your joints." Mason stood nearby, arms crossed, quietly proud. He glanced at Kate, who stood a few feet away talking to a volunteer. Her laugh, light, surprised, washed over him like a wave from another life. A group of parents approached Mason. "You're Finn's dad, right?" a tall man asked. Mason hesitated. "Yeah, I am." "Kid's a natural," another parent said. "Can't believe he taught my son what a counterweight is in 10 minutes. Mason smiled. "He's got good instincts." Kate joined them, holding 2 bottles of water. She handed one to Mason. "I told you he was special," she said, eyes soft. Mason looked out at Finn. "He's something else." They stood in silence for a moment, watching Finn crouch beside another student's bridge and gently reinforce a wobbling beam. Mason turned to Kate. "I want to make this more than a one-time thing. I want to invest." "In what?" she asked. "In kids, in this lot, in giving them space to build things that matter." Kate tilted her head. "Is this Mason Reed, CEO, talking, or the man who canceled a board meeting for pancakes?" "Both," he said, "but mostly the second." That afternoon, after the last child left, Mason stayed behind with Finn. "I think we need a name," Finn said, looking around. "For this place." "A name?" Mason asked. "Yeah, something cool, like the Bridge Yard or Builder's Lot." Mason considered. "How about Finn's Field?" Finn blushed. "That's too much." Mason smiled. "Then let's call it the Red Thread." Finn paused. "Like the bridge?" "Exactly. It holds things together, quietly." Finn nodded. "That's pretty awesome." They high-fived. That night, back at Kate's apartment, Finn was asleep on the couch, model bridge tucked in his arms, the red thread wrapped tightly around its center, just like always. Mason sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, staring at the contact labeled Bruce Reed. He tapped it. Let it ring. His father answered on the third tone. "Mason." "I need answers," Mason said coldly. Bruce sighed. "Still chasing ghosts, I see." "I'm not chasing anything," Mason snapped. "I'm standing in it. A boy, a bridge, and the wreck you made." "You're being emotional," Bruce replied. "I'm being honest," Mason shot back. "You lied. You stole 11 years. Bruce's voice sharpened. "I protected you. Protected everything we built." Mason stood, voice rising. "You protected your control, not me." "Mason, I'm going to find the truth," he interrupted. "And when I do, you're going to answer for it." He hung up. Kate stood in the hallway, arms crossed, having heard every word. "You're really digging?" "I have to," Mason said. She nodded. "Then dig deep." The next day, Mason met with a private investigator. He handed over the breakup letter, the one Bruce claimed Kate wrote. "Can you trace this?" Mason asked. The PI examined it. "I'll know by end of week." Mason stood outside the office afterward, breathing hard, phone still buzzing from ignored calls. His eyes caught the red thread wrapped around his wrist. Finn had tied it there like a bracelet before school. "For strength," the boy had said. Now, Mason looked down at it, heart steadying. He wasn't just uncovering a lie anymore. He was building something new, beam by beam, thread by thread. And he wasn't backing down. The rain came fast that Thursday afternoon. Houston, thunder, rolling low, clouds thick over the city. Mason sat in his office, blinds drawn, the blueprint of his latest high-rise untouched on the table. His phone buzzed. It was the private investigator. He answered. "Tell me." "I traced the paper stock, ink, and the envelope," the PI said. "The letter wasn't mailed. It was hand-delivered. Postmark's fake." Mason's pulse ticked. The signature, a handwriting match to your father. Mason gripped the desk edge. You're sure? 100%. Bruce Reed forged it. He closed his eyes, breath catching. 11 years. Gone because of one man's lie. Thank you, he said tightly. Send the file to my personal email. He ended the call and just sat there, rain tapping the windows like a clock counting down. Later that evening, he stood outside Bruce's penthouse, his knuckles rapped hard against the brass door. Bruce answered, whiskey in hand, as if nothing had changed. Didn't expect you tonight. Mason stepped in, soaked from the storm. You lied. You forged Kate's name. You broke apart a family. Bruce's face didn't move. You were on the verge of securing our first municipal contract. You think the board would have trusted a CEO tangled in a paternity scandal? I would have chosen them, Mason said. Kate. Finn. No, son, Bruce replied coldly. You would have chosen failure, and I wasn't about to let that happen. Mason's voice rose. He's my son. He's your distraction, Bruce snapped, and she was your weakness. Mason shook his head. No, you are. He pulled a folder from his jacket. This is everything. The investigator's report, forgeries, timelines. I'm done covering for you. Bruce's jaw tightened. You'd throw me under for a kid you just met? Mason's voice cracked. He's not just a kid. He's mine. And I missed every one of his first 11 years because of you. Bruce downed the rest of his drink. You want to make this public? Go ahead. But don't expect me to go down alone. Mason stepped closer. This isn't about revenge. It's about rebuilding. And I don't need your empire. I'll build something better, starting with him. He turned and walked out, rain slamming down as if the sky itself had snapped. That night, at Kate's apartment, Mason knocked gently. She opened the door, worry on her face. I know everything, he said. He forged the letter, lied to both of us. She froze. You're sure? He handed her the file. I had it investigated. Kate skimmed the first page, then the next, her lips trembling. Mason's voice softened. You didn't walk away. He pushed you out. You so tried. Tears fell. I thought I imagined it, that maybe I really had missed something. You didn't, Mason said. You were right. Finn appeared in the hallway, rubbing his eyes. What's going on? Kate bent down, voice shaky. Daddy just told me the truth. Finn blinked. So, you're really my dad? Mason knelt beside him. Yes, and I'm sorry I wasn't there before. Finn looked down. You're here now? Mason nodded. And I'm staying. Finn pulled something from behind his back, a tiny wooden plank, the last piece of his model. I saved this, he said. It holds the middle beam. Mom said it's the most important part. Mason took it gently, then pulled out his keychain. He clipped it to the ring. Kate smiled through tears. Looks like you've got your symbol, Mason looked at both of them, eyes wet. No, we do. Mason sat in his corner office, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Houston skyline. His phone buzzed with meeting reminders, investor calls, zoning hearings, project approvals. But his mind was miles away. On his desk sat a model bridge. Finn's from last week. Center beam reinforced with a red thread, taped neatly across the span. Mason touched it lightly. He picked up the phone. Paula, cancel my flight to Dubai. His assistant hesitated. Sir, that project, push it. Tell them it can't come before family. Click. That afternoon, Mason pulled up to the vacant lot. Dust blew across the ground, but something new stood at the center. 2 wooden tables, toolboxes, a folding canopy. Finn was there already, sleeves rolled, measuring a fresh piece of pine. You're early, Finn called, smiling. So are you. Kate stepped out from her car, holding blueprints. We made a list, she said. Finn's got ideas. Mason took the paper. Hand-drawn plans for a small workshop. Shelves, benches, a place for kids to learn. In bold letters at the top, Red Thread Bridge Yard. I want it to be real, Finn said. Not just a summer thing. All year, for everybody. Mason knelt beside him. Then we'll build it. Kate raised an eyebrow. We? Mason looked at her steady. I made enough decisions without you. This time, we decide together. She held his gaze. Then start with this, tomorrow's contest. Are you going? He paused. That's the same day as the board vote on the Delacroix Tower. Kate nodded. You can't be in two places. Mason stood. Then I won't go to either. She blinked. What? I'll be here, he said, at the contest, helping Finn. But that deal can wait, Mason said firmly. Bridges like this one can't. Finn's eyes lit up. You mean it? Mason pulled out his phone and deleted the event. Done. They worked for hours, sweat on their brows, sawdust in their hair. Mason taught Finn to use a clamp without cracking wood. Kate showed him how to draw load paths on blueprints. Later, as dusk rolled in, Mason pulled something from his glove box, a velvet box. He opened it to reveal a pin. A small, silver bridge. This was my grandfather's, Mason said. He built his first bridge by hand, wore this every day until the day he died. He handed it to Finn. But, Finn hesitated. This is yours. Mason shook his head. No, son, it's ours now. Finn took it carefully, like it might break, then smiled. I'll wear it tomorrow. Kate watched the exchange, her eyes softening. That night, as they packed up, Mason looked at the dusty lot lit by a single floodlight. No skyscraper, no fame, just wood, glue, and heart. Funny, he said, glancing at Kate. I've built 100 towers, but this is the first thing that feels permanent. She smiled. That's because this one's built with more than concrete. He nodded. It's built with a love. The wind stirred the red thread hanging from a nail nearby. It danced in the air, thin, delicate, but unbroken. The sun broke through a veil of morning haze as families trickled into the fairgrounds. Folding tables lined the walkways, covered in paints, glue, rulers, and strings. The annual bridge-building contest had drawn kids from across Houston, but one table stood apart, neatly arranged, precise. Finn's. Mason stood beside him, wearing jeans, a flannel shirt, and a tool belt, not his usual CEO attire. You nervous? Mason asked. Finn squinted at his model. A little. Mason knelt to eye level. Then you're doing something that matters. Kate arrived with 2 coffees and a soft smile. Judges start in 20 minutes. Finn looked up. Mom, can you help me attach the last thread? She nodded and knelt beside them. Together, the 3 of them tied the final piece, one thin red thread spanning the central beam. Looks solid, Mason said, giving it a gentle tap. Finn glanced at his bridge, then back at Mason. Wait here. He darted to his backpack, rummaging through pockets before pulling out a small wooden box. He returned, holding it with 2 hands. I made something, Finn said, cheeks flushing. It's for you. Mason opened the lid. Inside sat a miniature replica of Finn's bridge, crafted in deep oak, sanded smooth. The same thread ran through the middle. Underneath, carved in tiny block letters, for the one who stayed. Mason stared, breath caught. You didn't have to skip your project, Finn added softly. But you did. Kate wiped a tear away before it could fall. Mason looked at them both. I've built towers all over the world, he said, voice low, but this is the most important one I'll ever hold. Finn smiled wide. It's not perfect. Mason shook his head. That's what makes it real. A bell rang. The judges were moving in. Kate took Finn's hand, then Mason's, linking them together. Let's do this. Hours passed in a blur of presentations, smiles, and questions. Finn answered with confidence even when his hands shook. Mason stood nearby the entire time, watching, proud. At the end of the day, an older judge, with glasses, approached them. "Your bridge was remarkable," she said to Finn. "But what moved the panel most was this." She held up the miniature gift Finn had made. The craftsmanship, the message. It wasn't just engineering, it was heart. Finn beamed. Mason's eyes glistened. "We'd like to offer you a mentorship with the Regional Architecture Program," she said, "if that's something you'd want." Finn looked up at Mason. "Can we say yes?" Mason nodded. "Absolutely." As the crowd thinned, Kate pulled Mason aside. "You changed today," she said quietly. Mason exhaled. "I finally stopped building things for shareholders and started building them for him." He nodded, then hesitated. "And maybe for you, too." She looked down. "I never thought we'd be here again. I never stopped wishing we could be." Finn ran up, waving a certificate in one hand and a cookie in the other. "We won something, and I got free cookies." Mason laughed. "Best prize of all." Kate smiled. "Come on, bridge boy, let's go home." Mason held up the wooden gift, the red thread glowing softly in the afternoon sun. One bridge, 2 hands, 3 hearts. And finally, one home. The week after the contest, Mason stood in the center of the dusty lot, now cleared and measured. Wooden stakes marked the corners of a future building. His boots pressed into the dirt that once held only folding tables and glue sticks. Finn ran toward him, a rolled-up drawing tube bouncing against his backpack. "I finished the final draft." Mason crouched as Finn unrolled the blueprint. "You added storage lockers and ventilation?" "Yep, and a skylight over the workshop bench. Natural light's better for painting," Finn said, proud. Mason smiled. "You think of everything." Kate arrived behind them, wiping her hands with a towel. She'd just come from the community center, where she'd started volunteering. "I saw your name on the building permit," she said. "You're really doing it." Mason stood and looked at her. "It's not just mine. The land's in your name, too." Kate blinked. "What?" "I talked to my lawyer. Split it 3 ways, me, you, and Finn." "Finn's 11, she said, stunned. Mason smiled. "He'll grow into it." Kate's eyes softened, the fight in her fading. "You've changed." He shrugged. "Turns out bridges aren't just things you build. Sometimes they're things you repair." That afternoon, a cement truck rolled in. Volunteers arrived with gloves and hard hats. Mason didn't stand back like before. He led. Poured concrete, hauled wood, drilled frames. Finn hammered signs with bold letters. "Red Thread Workshop, where kids build dreams." As dusk fell, Kate placed a thermos beside Mason. "Thought you might need this." He took a sip. "Still the best coffee in town." They stood watching Finn help paint the fence. "He's better with tools than I was at that age," Mason said. Kate nodded. "He's a mix of us." Mason turned to her. "There's one more thing." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the wooden bridge Finn had gifted him. He'd added a small brass plaque at the base, freshly engraved. It read, "The bridge that brought us back." "I want this mounted on the front wall," Mason said, "so every kid who walks through knows what this place means." Kate took the bridge in her hands, her voice caught. "It's beautiful." "He made it," Mason said, "but I finally understand it." At the far end of the lot, Finn yelled, "Hey, I'm almost done with the railing. Come look." Mason and Kate walked over side by side. The railing stood on the workshop steps, 2 wooden posts joined by a red cord running between them. Finn pointed proudly. "It's like a mini bridge for people who are nervous going up." Mason's throat tightened. "It's perfect." Kate squeezed his hand. "So is this." They didn't need to say what this was. Later that night, as they locked up the tool shed, Mason looked around at the spot that had once been empty dust. Now it held beams and nails and color and something more invisible but unshakable: trust. The bridge on the plaque. the red thread between the posts, the boy carrying both their hearts. For the first time in years, Mason didn't feel like a builder trying to fix what was lost. He felt like a father finally standing on solid ground. It was a quiet Sunday morning when Mason pulled up to the country club where Bruce spent most weekends. Sunlight glinted off the polished glass entrance, but Mason's face was all storm. He walked past marble pillars and crisp uniforms, past nods from men who once measured him by stock prices and not by who he chose to show up for. Bruce was seated under a cabana, reading the Wall Street Journal, whiskey already sweating beside his untouched eggs. Mason sat down across from him, calm but unblinking. Bruce didn't look up. "I hear you skipped Dubai. For what, exactly? An after-school project?" "No," Mason replied. "For my son. And for the truth." Bruce finally set the paper aside. "I found the letter," Mason said. "Had it analyzed. It was your signature, not hers." Bruce's mouth twitched, but he said nothing. "You forged it. Lied to me, stole years from Finn, from Kate, from me." Bruce leaned back, unbothered. "You would have thrown it all away. I gave you focus." "You gave me a hole," Mason snapped, "and I've been building from it ever since." Bruce looked amused. "You done?" Mason pulled out Finn's wooden bridge, placed it gently on the table. Its red thread glowed in the soft light. "This," Mason said, voice low, "is the only legacy I care about now." Bruce eyed it, sneering. "A toy?" "A gift," Mason corrected, "from a boy who built something real while you tore it down." He stood, leaving the bridge behind. "You'll regret this," Bruce warned. Mason turned. "I already regret trusting you." That evening, Mason returned to the workshop where Kate and Finn were painting trim with donated brushes. He didn't speak at first, just stood in the doorway, watching. Kate noticed. "Was it bad?" Mason nodded. "But it's over. I told him everything. He knows I'm out. Personally, professionally." She set down the paint tray and walked over. "That's a big move." Mason looked her in the eyes. "He doesn't get to control our story anymore." Finn ran up. "Dad, the railing's done. Come see." They walked together to the side of the new building. Finn pointed proudly to the freshly painted sign. "The Red Thread Workshop, where mistakes can still build bridges." Kate smiled. That tagline was his idea. Mason looked at Finn, voice thick. "It's perfect." Finn pulled something from his pocket. "I made you one more thing." He handed over a folded piece of paper, a drawing. Crayon and ink showed 3 people standing on a big red bridge, hands linked. Underneath, in bold letters, "This is us now." Mason felt tears sting his eyes. "I'll frame it." Kate touched his arm. "I already did." Back inside, Mason hung the drawing beside the wooden bridge on the entry wall. Together, they made a quiet promise that broken bonds could be rebuilt, that legacies could change, that no lie could outlast the truth. And this time, no one was walking away. The ribbon fluttered in the breeze as a crowd gathered around the new Red Thread Workshop. Painted a deep barn red with wide windows and fresh cedar beams, it stood as proof that something lasting could rise from empty dirt. Mason stood beside Kate and Finn, scissors in hand. Finn grinned, bouncing on his toes. "You ready, kid?" Mason asked. Finn gave a thumbs up. "Let's build something big." With a swift snip, the ribbon fell. Cheers rose from the crowd. Families, kids, engineers, teachers. Reporters took photos as kids rushed inside to explore the workstations. Tables lined with wood, glue guns, calipers, safety goggles. Mason had spared no expense. He'd hired retired engineers and college mentors. Every corner of the workshop whispered, "You belong here." Finn guided two younger kids to a supply shelf. "You always measure twice," he said confidently, "because wood only forgives once." Kate laughed. "That's your line." Mason shrugged. "He makes it sound better." Inside the back room, a glass case held Finn's original bridge, thread and all, next to his drawing of their family on a red span. A plaque below read, "Designed by Finn Reed, age 11. Built by love." Later, a local news anchor asked Mason on camera, "Why this? Why now?" He looked into the lens, then at Kate and Finn. "Because sometimes the strongest structures start with forgiveness, and the boldest futures begin with second chances." That night, kids stayed late, sanding and sketching. One girl, no older than 7, whispered to her friend, "I want to be a builder like Finn." Mason overheard and knelt beside them. "You already are," he said gently. "Every time you dream something into wood, you're building more than you think." Outside, floodlights bathed the front yard, where a sign lit up in soft gold, "Red Thread Community Engineering Center." Kate joined Mason on the porch, holding 2 cups of hot cocoa. "You proud?" she asked. "I am," he replied, "but not of the building." She raised a brow. "Of the boy, and the woman who never gave up on him." Kate looked at him closely. "You're becoming the man I always hoped you would be." He smiled. "I had a great blueprint. I just needed the right partners." They stood there in silence as the breeze carried laughter and sawdust through the warm air. Finn was helping a boy test load weight on a popsicle stick arch, both of them focused like surgeons. Mason leaned against the rail. "He's not just good. He's better than me already." Kate nodded. "That's what legacy looks like." In the far corner of the yard, Mason noticed something new. 4 boys and girls working together on a strange, slanted model. He approached. "What's this?" he asked. One of the boys looked up. "A curved footbridge. Finn said it'd be cool over the creek by the park." Mason studied the plan. "You'd need support beams on both sides and a tension cable underneath." Another girl chimed in. "Finn said you could help us design the anchors." Mason grinned. "Then let's do it." That night, under lantern light, Mason drew beside them, sketching curves and calculating pressure. Finn stood over his shoulder, watching closely. Kate took a photo from the door. 3 generations, 1 table, dozens of hands. And, somewhere in the air, the quiet sound of a bridge being built, not just from wood or rope, but from healing, from belief, from home. The morning sun glowed gold across the fairgrounds as folding chairs and banners rose like blooms. Booths lined the park lawn, each one a mini workshop manned by kids in smudged overalls and eager hands. It was bridge contest day, again, but this time it wasn't just a competition. It was legacy. Mason stood at the center table, adjusting the tent poles, hair dusted with sawdust, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Kate passed behind him, clipboard in hand, greeting families, nodding at judges, her voice calm and warm. And Finn. He stood on a folding stool, tightening the bolts of a red, arch-shaped model, his latest creation. A little brass plate read, "Team Reed." Mason walked over, wiping his hands on a rag. "Need backup?" Finn grinned. "Already reinforced the trusses, but I saved the final piece for you." From his pocket he pulled a thread. Not just any thread, a crimson cord, like the one on the very first bridge. Mason reached out, and together father and son tied the red thread across the central beam. Kate watched from a few feet away, her eyes misting over. "It's perfect," she said. "No," Mason replied. "He's perfect." The announcer called contestants forward. Finn straightened his collar and held out a hand. "Come with me?" he asked. Mason glanced at Kate. She nodded. All 3 walked up together. As they approached the judging panel, a hush fell. Then applause broke, soft at first, then louder, rippling through parents, volunteers, and builders who had come to know not just the family's story, but their strength. Judge Daniels stepped forward. Today's contest honors not just engineering skill, but creativity, heart, and teamwork. He gestured toward the trio. And nothing says bridge building like what this family has done for the entire community. The crowd erupted in cheers. Cameras flashed. A banner snapped above them. Bridges build futures. Later, as the fair settled into laughter and lemonade, Finn found Mason near the prize table. "Dad," he said, tugging Mason's sleeve, "I want to build a real one someday. A big one. Over water." Mason looked down. "Then we'll do it together." Finn's eyes lit up. "Really?" Mason nodded. "You design it. I'll pour the concrete. Deal?" Finn offered his hand. "Deal." Behind them, Kate pulled her phone out and snapped a photo, father and son, shaking on a promise, bridge model at their feet. She whispered to herself, "This is the life we were always meant to build." Back at the Red Thread workshop that night, the family placed the newest model in the front display case beside the original one. 2 bridges, 1 thread, endless span. As they locked up, Mason lingered at the door. He touched the frame of Finn's original drawing, the one with the 3 of them standing hand in hand. This time, he didn't just look. He lived it, and for the first time in decades, he didn't feel like a man chasing redemption. He felt like a man who had crossed the bridge,